What's up, world? Welcome to a new episode of the Brand New Show, Underdog to Success podcast interview edition. Man, I am here with one of my favorite new books out here. Amazing author. She has a book that I love. I read it. It was an incredible book, and it's for not just kids, but for the kid at heart too. I think it's an amazing book for all of us, man. And she's an amazing podcaster as well, one of my
Thank
good
you.
friends. So tell everybody where they can find your podcast, where they can follow you, and pretty much where they can find this amazing book that I love now. It's one of my favorite books. So tell everybody where they can find it and where they can find you pretty much.
Thanks, Brandon. Okay, well, my name's Stephanie, and my podcast is called the Stuff Up Podcast. So you can find me anywhere you listen to podcasts. My website is stuffuppodcast.com, and my website for the book is stephanieandwebb.com.
Yeah.
And the book is called What Should Dragon Do?
Yeah. And it's a good book.
Thank
Okay,
you.
you got kids and you're trying to teach them about kind of like kindness, which I loved a lot about the book. It was so self-aware of like kindness. It was an amazing thing. But before we get into the book, I want to talk about how did you become, a book writer like that? Because that takes a lot of time to like craft a book, even though it is a kid's book and everything like that. It still takes a lot of time because you have to come with artwork. You got to sit down with author like artwork and people that draw pictures, and because it's a very colorful book. I was looking at the pictures like, wow, this is really good. And I was like, I was just like, wow, this is really good. Like, this reminds me of something I grew up looking at. Like, so it was just like, so how did you become an author?
Well, I have to say, I need you in my life every day because I need this kind of encouragement. Thank you so much. You know what? It started out as just a bunch of roommate stories of when I lived with people, these kind of things would happen. And so I just kind of wrote them down as funny stories to remember. And then I was thinking this would be hilarious as a children's book. So I just kind of wrote down the stories, sent them to a few of my friends, and they thought it was funny. So uh during the pandemic, we had a lot of time, right? Because we were all in lockdown. And
Yes.
I watched, when you Google something, I
Yes.
Googled children's book, publishing children's book. And then all of a sudden on Facebook, you have all these suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is cool, although also overwhelming sometimes, right? And I get caught up
Yeah.
in these things because I'll start watching a webinar of somebody, and then of course they're like, and buy my series, my uh,
Yeah.
you know, I
Yeah.
do a
Yeah.
course for $1,000.
Yeah.
But I just kind of started picking different things from different people, and they were saying how to self-publish. So I actually went on Fiverr and found a illustrator, and I don't know their name. I asked for their name. They just said their their Fiverr name is Kids Art, so kids underscore art. And I liked how they did because I like the computer graphics.
Yeah.
So I just kind of I paid for them to do the pictures, and then I found a publisher out actually in Vancouver. I'm in Canada, so called Freeze and Press. And so I asked, like, I got them to publish the book, like self-publish. I had to self-publish. I sent it out to so many publishers, but that's really hard to do to find
Yeah.
somebody who's interested.
Yeah.
So that's the story of how I got started.
That's a pretty cool story because like that's a scary thing to do, is to jump out there and take something like that into your own hands and go out there and try to figure it out. And I was reading a book and I was like, this has to be something she went through in her own life. So you saying that, it was like, yeah, this is like really living with people where you're like, this is such, I don't like this person, what they do is, I don't like when this person does this. It's like, okay.
Have you lived with roommates?
I live with people, so I know
So
exactly how you.
yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly how you.
Although I
That,
guess it
that's
doesn't
why.
have to be roommates, right? It can be
Yeah,
family.
it
So
just
I
be
got family
family.
that do this stuff too.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, this makes total sense. I was like, I could completely relate to this book. Like,
Oh, that's
I
so
can
funny.
completely relate to this book. Um, what? But you also an author, but you're also a podcaster. So
Yeah.
how did that kind of correlate into each other, like podcasting, Arthur? Did you have to take did you have to take some time off of the podcast? Was it like every other night you would just write something down? I mean, even though you had like notes and stuff down, did it now have to be like at a certain point? Because as a podcaster, this kind of does take up a lot of your time. You got to come up with creation of the show, what your topic is going to be, how you want to formulate the topics, how you want to do you want to bring people on a podcast? Do you really don't want to bring people on a podcast? Do you want to talk by yourself? Do you want to reach out to certain people? And it's a lot of things. So how do you manage that doing, and also, being an author of a book?
Well, it was actually kind of easy in a sense of I was not working for the last 2 years
Oh,
for health reasons and then the pandemic and just stuff. So I had more time. Now I'm working and I find it that much more difficult because I work at a computer 8 hours a day.
mm,
And then I'm like, "Oh, now I gotta go and do stuff on a computer." But, yeah, the podcasting actually started so when I left my last job, I worked in finance for 14 years,
mm,
and I was always told I worked on the phones too at a call center, and I was always told I had a nice voice. So I thought, "Oh, I'll get into voiceover. That'll be easy." So I got the whole setup here, which is why my booth is kind of, like,
yeah,
dark and stuff.
yeah.
I got
So
blankets everywhere.
it's like the sound could stay in. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I started trying to I started taking acting lessons and improv online and trying to do the voiceover stuff. And then I realized it wasn't really what I actually enjoyed. I wasn't
mm,
because people said, "Oh, I love getting up in front of the microphone." And I didn't really love it so much in that sense. But what I enjoy is the podcasting because I just like talking with people and I find that enjoyable. But I started the podcast last year in August to force myself to learn the audio and the tech part of voiceover stuff because I was
yeah,
finding it stress. I was like, "Oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it." If I had a podcast, I'll have to do it because you'll have episodes coming out and you just need to get it done, right? Because I
yeah.
procrastinate. So that's actually why I
I'm the
started
same.
art. Yeah.
I'm the
You
same.
get it.
Yeah.
So that's why I started podcasting. I met people, just people on Facebook that some of my friends, I'm like, "Hey, let's talk about different things." And then that's kind of how it started. You're right though, it takes up a lot of time. I learned out how to edit. Although I do have an editor now. I send German at your podcast editor.
Hmm.
He's a great editor, so he helps me a lot because it's so overwhelming, right? Like there's so
Yes.
much, it takes so much time and I'm very anal or sorry, can I say that? I I'm a perfectionist, so I'll every little thing I'm like, "Ew, I have to take that out."
Uh,
So it takes me so long to do these things, but I find the ideas come though, like I'll be like, "I want to talk about atheism." So I was looking for a guy who was a Christian who became an atheist. And I thought that would be fun. I don't know, I just ideas come to my head or you get a lot of life coaches who want to come on and talk about life coaching and personal
yeah.
development, which I love. I love that kind of stuff and it helps me in my own life because I'm like, sweet, like a free session, right? Because they're coming on your podcast.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that took up most of my time, but the book was actually like the publisher I went with, they really helped me out a lot. I found it so overwhelming and they were like, "Well, we need this and this and this." And I'd be like, I don't know." And they were like, "It's okay. Just here's a link for this. Watch this webinar, watch this, and they really helped calm me down because I got stressed easily.
Yeah.
So but yeah, but it was easy because I wasn't working. Or it
Mm.
was easier, I guess. Sorry. I talk too much sometimes.
No, it's good. We need to know all this information because that's the beauty of a podcast. Because there's certain things about um, people that you learn, through interviews that you don't, and then you start reflecting on yourself and being like, wow, I'm just like that in no sense. Like I can understand that. Like like why I started doing a podcast, I wasn't working. Like I was just was there. I mean, it's the easiest thing I can get my hands on. It was quick, fast, and right there on my phone. So Yeah, I totally understand that.
Did
Totally
you
understand
start
that.
because you like talking with people?
Uh, nah, I actually started because of I was going through a lot of stuff in life at the time. So I was like, I need to do something to, pretty much keep myself busy for before I, do something really dramatic to myself. So that's what really started my podcast. It wasn't really like, and I just started talking to people. Like I just started interviewing podcasters and people, like literally at the end of last year. So like, well, at the end of my last season. So my podcast. So that's kind of where that started kicking in. But usually I'm just talking to about, I'm just on the mic by myself.
Well, you just started your third season, right?
I'm gonna start my third season Monday. So
Oh,
this
okay.
is this is gonna be one of the episodes that I'm putting on my third season. So a lot of people are gonna get a chance to hear this and really, enjoy it. And I'm so looking forward to it too, because that's why I think that talking to somebody like you that is, a podcaster, but has so many more things coming up and so many more things that you're doing, it helps me to be like, there's still something more to this than just podcasting. You can go and do music or write a book if you want to. You can do it all if you really want to. So that's why I like talking to people like you, because it's like they're doing podcasting, but it's so much more that they're doing too. It's not just podcasting. It kind of helps you, but it doesn't hurt you. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
it's a good thing. You get on a podcast, you can just talk about your book if you felt like it.
Well, and it's funny because now having my own podcast, I get to know other podcasters, and then you get on their shows, and then your word gets around too, right? Because then people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh, Brandon Janot, let's listen to him," and it's fun that way. And then there's such a great community. I mean, it was
Yes.
JR from WV Uncommonplace that,
Place.
yeah, who's our mutual friend, and so
Mhm.
yeah, I just find there's such a great support on Instagram. Because I don't find it necessarily. Well, I just joined Twitter recently, but I haven't really found many podcasters on Facebook. I don't know. I
yeah,
feel,
that's not that many. That's not that many.
yeah, it's interesting the
Yeah.
different social media. They all have their uniqueness.
Yeah, it really is. It's yeah, I mean certain people use certain things, but Instagram I've realized is the most podcast based. They tell you go to TikTok and all these other places, but it's just Instagram feels more like it's controlled still. Like you can control your Instagram way more than a lot of other places. So yeah.
Yeah. Although you always need to add a graphic. So I'm always like, what graphic do I put up?
Yeah, but let's talk about the book now, because
Okay.
this book is very good. Like I said, I read it. I thought it was amazing. Yeah, let's get that in there. Uh,
What should dragon do? Oh, my ring light is like focusing on it.
yeah,
So, yeah, so it's a story of Dragon who
yes.
has two roommates, and they're bears called Racer and Scout. And it's basically about this tiny situations that drive us crazy. Like in the
Mhm.
one situation, Dragon wanted to watch TV, and I can't remember now. Was it Scout or Racer? Was
It was Racer, and she was trying to sleep, and
yeah,
she woke up out of sleep because she got up, ate breakfast, and she had a nightmare, I think, the night before, and she woke up, got breakfast, thought nobody was at home, and then she went to sleep, woke up because it was too noisy. And she was
Dragon
like,
had the TV on
yeah,
max loud.
yeah,
And then Racer comes out and she's like, "Oh, can you just turn the TV down? I'm just trying to have a nap," which
yeah,
is a legitimate request. You can still watch TV. You can just watch it with less volume. And Dragon gets so mad and is like, "This is my day off. And I want to watch TV and I want to have it as loud as I want." So then that makes Racer very sad. And then she goes and stays with her friend Bobo because Bobo will let her sleep over at her place. So
yeah,
the just those kind of like, yeah, being aware of other people and yeah, having that self-awareness of being like, okay, no problem. I understand this is bothering you. I mean that happens all the time when you're living with people. I that situation with the
yeah.
toilet rolls. the toilet paper, you put it,
Yeah.
I don't care what way it goes on. I really don't. I never even thought that was an issue. But I've lived with people who said, no, it has to go on this way. And I'm like, okay, because it bothers you, I'll put it on the way you want it on. I just care that people put it on because I've lived with roommates who don't even put the toilet paper roll on the roll.
Wow.
And I'm like, come on. They put it on the right beside it, right on the sink.
Yeah, the tub or something. Like, yeah, it's just like, come on, like it's right there for a reason, man.
It doesn't take that
It,
long for you to put it on the roll.
it really doesn't. It really doesn't.
So I don't know. I just think those are all situations we can totally identify with. And it doesn't take that much to kind of to empathize and put yourself in that person's situation. And also, I mean, some of these situations like turning the TV volume down, you don't need it up so loud.
Yeah.
If you can hear it when the volume's lower, why would you need to interrupt somebody's sleep? That actually happened. And so it was just kind of
I was about to ask you which one of those roommates was Dragon. I wasn't hoping it was you, because Dragon seemed like a bit of a bit of a bastard. Like it was just like, good God, like come on. Like every 5 seconds you had a problem with somebody. Like what's going on? Like the toothpaste was in a sink and like she went off and like wrote a note and put it on the on her refrigerator. Like, why would you do that? Who does that? Like,
I had a roommate who wrote notes for everything. She didn't like something, she'd write you a little note. And it was very passive aggressive. So I mean, it's accumulation of different stories with different roommates, but it was kind of like I nicknamed one roommate Dragon, and it kind of went from there. But I was telling a friend though, I said we're all Dragon. There's
yeah.
stuff I've said and done, and I'm like, oh crap, that's been me at times.
Yeah. I mean, Dragon. I mean, the last story is when they were trying to like learn a new thing, and you would talk about how Dragon uh doesn't like to take directions. They didn't want to like take a map. They didn't want to learn a map, so they were just walking around, and they called their friends, and they're like, "Yo, Scout Racer, can you come get me?" And they're like, "No, we try to teach you the map like 5 times. You said I don't want to learn it because it's boring." And now it's like, well, can you come get me? No, because there's a parade going on. It's like we can't really get out there and go get you anyway. It's like, dude, just ask a cop, and he would tell you where to go. And she was just like mad when she got home. And I remember a story like that because I remember this is the reason why I started driving, because of this reason. I had to learn how to drive
Oh,
because of this reason. I was like, I remember one time I went to school. I was in college, and I can't remember if I was on orientation or I was the class was canceled something, and I went and I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I want like come get me. And she was like, I just got to work. I'm not coming to get you. You just got up there. Like I'm not coming to get you. And I was like, I was like, so you telling me I gotta stay up here to lunch? So you know, get off to 12. I'm supposed to stay up here for 2 hours. I was like, forget that. I'm gonna just walk home. She's like, okay, walk home. And I walked home. And I was like, I was like, I learned my lesson, but I'm never doing this shit again. I was like, I'm never doing that again. I need to learn how to drive. So it's kind of like that. It was like, yeah, you were mad at that moment, but you learned something in the process that helped you learn later on in life, because now Dragon knows another way to get home. And I was
yeah.
like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I was like, that makes total sense. Yeah, you got mad when you got home. I was like, why you didn't come get me? But it didn't. In actuality, it was like, I'm kind of happy you didn't come get me because I needed to learn that for myself. And I think that's the
Yes.
one thing about the ending of that book was so important, because Dragon had to learn something about themselves to continue to move forward in life, because we get so stuck into like, oh, they're gonna always help me. I'm always good because I got those people that's gonna always help me.
Yeah.
It's like, well, sometimes those people get to the point where they don't want to help you anymore. They need you to do something on your own. Like they can't be there all the time. So I thought that was a really cool ending of the book. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, because I actually could relate to that story more than you probably thought I could. Like I related to that story very well. I was like, yeah, that reminded me of that time. I remember that time walking home and it was raining. And when I got home, my shoes were soaked, my socks were soaked,
Oh.
my hood was soaked, everything was soaked. I got in the tub and like took a shower and went to sleep. So I was like, I was like, yeah, that was a venture. That was an adventure for the day. I'm done with that. And like that was the last time I never had a car. I was like, that was the last time I had didn't have a license because I learned how to drive immediately after that.
That's awesome. And you remember that, like,
I
so
remember that.
specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm the youngest. And so my sister, there's just the two of us. She's like, "You were so spoiled and mom did everything for you." And yeah, I would be like, "Oh, can you come pick me up?" And but when you have to learn these things on your own, yes, you have an attitude. You're like, "Ugh, why do I have
Yeah.
to do this?" But then when you do, you're a better person for it. And
Yeah.
you actually feel better because you're like, "I'm more independent now that I've had to do this." And I
Mm,
think my generation and your generation probably we're very much like that. Our parents did a lot for us.
yeah.
Most of us. I mean, not
I'm the
everybody,
baby
but
too. I'm the baby too. So
you get it.
yeah, totally get it.
And yeah, I had a roommate or a friend, she said she never learned to drive. And I was like, "Don't you want the freedom of?" Because it's great. I mean, I love not having to rely on people. If I want
Yeah.
to leave a party, I want to leave a party and not have to wait for somebody else. She goes, "No, I don't want to learn to drive. I like people chauffeuring me around." I'm like, "Okay." But then when they can't chauffeur you
You're
around, you're
around. Yeah.
upset. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's weird. Yeah. I like, but like I was reading this book and like I said, I liked it a lot. So who's a racer in your life? Who's the racer? Because racers seem like just the regular old, just like pick up after everybody, try to be very nice, try to be very polite, be a really good roommate to everybody. Like when Dragon went off on Scout about the toothpaste in the sink and she got home, she read the note, she laughed and she went in the bathroom, cleaned up the toothpaste, and then wrote on the note, "Done." And I was just like, I started laughing so hard at that part because I was like, I would probably do something like that just because I wanted to make a point. Like, you could have just did that. Like, why would you? Why would you wait? Just do it right then and there. You just wrote a whole note
Yeah.
for what reason?
Uh, I lived with quite a few roommates there because I moved to Toronto and I went back to school. And so in this house I lived in, we had a lot of students as well that would come in and out. So there was every year there was somebody different. So you had all sorts, but there was a few, and I was also the one I like things clean.
Yeah.
So and I had some roommates who did not. So I was always the one cleaning, but I would get really grumpy about it. Like I'd be like,
Mm.
"Oh, no one else is cleaning and I have to do it." And then I'd make a big stink about it. So I had a bad attitude. Um, but I think, yeah, there was a few of us who were, it's kind of like a mixture of different people. But it's also hard to know because you have your people who take advantage. And then for people who will just be the ones to, if you see something, like my mom is the type that if you see something that needs to be done, you do it. But
Yeah.
then people take advantage of that. So
That.
if you're always the one cleaning, other people are like, "Oh, good, I don't have to clean."
Yeah.
But then the person cleaning starts to get very annoyed because they're always cleaning and everyone
Cleaning.
else is dirty.
Yeah.
And then you get an attitude. Like I was really, I know I was really angry a lot of the time, and I was just like kind of playing the martyr too, right? Like I'm cleaning up after everyone. So there's so much involved in the attitudes of everything that happens, whether you're the one cleaning or the one being dirty, or it's so much, right? It's not just
Yeah.
one thing.
Yeah. I like, and this is a good book for like young kids to learn because a lot of young kids need to learn this book because it does teach you a lot about taking into consideration people's
Mhm.
feelings, situations that they're also in. I think this is why it's a really good book for kids too because some kids they don't really have that type of structure around them where you have people that could teach you that. You go to school. When I remember when I was a kid in school, they taught me that. They taught me how to do certain things, and I went home. Then I learned how to do them even better at home. My mom would tell me clean the room, and I'm like, no, I don't want to clean my room. Then I go to school, And then I go to school and they tell me to clean, my cubby or whatever the case may be with it, or put your mat up the way, where you found it. And I'd be like, I don't want to do that. Well, you gotta learn how to do that. Yeah. And then I go home and I'd be like, and I start cleaning my room because I cleaned at school. I'm like, and then my mom be like, what the hell is wrong with him? What is wrong with him? And, and that was just a lesson. So I feel like that's kind of where this book kind of is really good because uh Dragon seemed like it needed a little help. She looked like she needed help. Like she was always the one that was taking a lot of people's feelings, you know, out and really wasn't really worried about other people's feelings.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you put in the beginning of the book self-awareness because a lot of people are not self-aware of that. They think that it's
No.
just me. Sometimes you just think it's just me in this world and you don't really fathom other people. But when you're living with two other people, you got to care about how they feel too.
Well, this is a huge thing. Like, I'm a highly sensitive person and empath. So it's always been a little bit easier for me to kind of be more sensitive to other people, but not everyone is built that way. So I used to get annoyed with people who aren't considerate of other people. But and that's also then I get self-righteous, right? Because I'm like, well,
Yeah.
they're not being what I am. And then and then I gotta watch like my attitude. Oh man. But one thing I think ah, and maybe this is thanks to the internet where we're starting to see different perspectives. I think the younger generation is getting this right, is putting yourself in other people's positions. So, like my parents' generation, or at least how I grew up, anyways, was very black and white. And so it's either like good or bad. And
Yeah.
now I see different things, when you're learning about, oh man, I don't even know anything really. I can be like, okay, I can see why people are struggling with this. Like even talking about things like socialism, you know, or not that I want to
Mhm.
get political, but
Yeah.
some people are like, no, that's all evil. But then when you kind of are like, okay, but there's people struggling with this and this and this, and if they don't have that, what do you do? And at least bring in conversation instead of fighting, which is what
Yeah.
people tend to do. So I think putting yourself in other people's positions and empathizing is huge in how we can heal together, heal as people. And that's why I think like podcasting and what I see on YouTube and stuff is people having conversations. And I just think that's a really beautiful thing. Have you seen those videos like Jubilee? They bring out these videos and they talk about like a middle ground where they bring people from opposite viewpoints to sit together and discuss.
I have seen videos like that on social media and on YouTube and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful. I think we should be discussing things more rather than fighting over everything. But anyway, well, yeah, going back to the book, sorry.
Nah, it's
Um,
great. That's
putting yourself in other people's positions. So understanding, like, you can understand Dragon, where if she was spoiled growing up, she had everything handed to her. So, no, I don't want to learn to read a map. You have to come get me because my parents always did that for me.
mhm.
So, in a sense, you can have some compassion because she's grew up that way and it's hard for her to learn new things. But on the other hand, you don't want to do things always for her because she needs to learn to do them for herself. So, yeah, different
Yeah.
things. I think it's just important for kids, for everybody to, and it's so hard. It can be hard, but to
Yeah.
stop and think it's not always about me. It's not always about how I view things or my perspective. It's what's this person going through? What's their perspective on it? Right.
Yeah. Uh, another character, the other character in the book, Scout. Uh, was running late for the appointment, and like we said, Dragon wrote a note about Scout leaving toothpaste in a sink, but she heard the phone ring, went in the room, talked to her friend real quick, and then realized she was late for the appointment, and she just had to leave. And I thought Scout was like, if Scout actually says, "I'm gonna clean this up," when I'm finished. I'm brushing my teeth, stuff happens, you know. And I think that like who is Scout? Like who is it? It's all roommates. Is just like that's how Scout came to be.
Well, that situation actually happened. It was actually floss, but I thought not all kids floss, you know.
Yeah. Maybe they
Floss
will
was
after
left.
this.
Sorry,
Maybe they will after this. I don't know. Let's see.
maybe. One of my roommates, I don't know, she just left floss on the sink and she forgot about it. But she was one of my cleaner roommates, so she wasn't the type that just left stuff around.
Right.
And it was just an accident. So I think that's the difference where, yeah, you do have people who will just leave things for everyone else to clean up. But a lot of times, and I've had this happen to me, like, why did you do this? Why did you leave this here? Oh, I was in a hurry. I'm sorry. I would have put it away. And that's when I guess it's hard to kind of sometimes understand that because if you're always picking up after people, you're like, just put your stuff away. But then sometimes it's just, oh, I didn't have time. I was rushing and I had to leave. Or I forgot I didn't see it or something like that. And those things
Yeah.
happen. So in that situation, yeah, Scout was like, "Oh, I'll clean this up." And then they got distracted and had to leave. And so it's fine. Like instead of making such a big deal about it and like writing a note, clean this up. It's just like, dude, it's fine. Let's just clean it up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I said, this is a really good book. I think a lot of people need to go get it, especially for kids, because nowadays kids, like we said, they don't really have that much self awareness, which is very hard to find nowadays. And it's a very tough thing to find sometimes with people because people nowadays just want to just take the easy way out and just care about themselves. But when you're living with somebody, you have to be very appreciative of that situation too, because you are living with somebody that is trying to help you as well. So
Mhm.
I thought this book was amazing.
Thank
Are
you.
we doing? Are we doing any other books? Or is there any other books in the works? Are we? What's going on?
Well, one of my friends, actually, she was one of my roommates, and she had a dog, or she still has the dog. She goes, "Oh, you gotta write a book about George. That's the dog's name." I was like, "Okay," because we had some really funny scenarios with the dog.
Okay.
Like like my one roommate, she was not a fan, but she took him out for a walk one day because the other roommate wasn't home. She goes, "Oh, can you just take him out to go to the bathroom?" And the dog was rolling around on somebody's
Right.
yard, and he rolled
Yeah.
around in dog poop. So
Mm.
she texted me. I was at school, and she goes, "Oh, he he rolled around in poop, and now I have to clean him." And I was laughing so hard. It was just so hilarious. Um, so she's like, "Okay, I'll buy the book if you include that story." So I think that'd be kind of fun if Dragon, Racer, and Scout get pets. And what do they do with that? I think that'd be kind of fun. So I don't know. And I think there'd be different aspects of like if Dragon goes to work or school or something and different scenarios that happen
Mm,
there. Yeah. One thing I found really fun about the book, and I didn't really think of this until because I just had the stories. And then I was thinking, hey, maybe you could ask for a kid's book, what should Dragon do? Because in this scenario, it's like, was this really the right response? And what should be the right response? So I wasn't really sure because it's for kids ages 3 to 6, and I wasn't really sure of how that works because I don't know like kid development and
age.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I sent it to the publisher and I was like, is this okay? Because they edit it and stuff. And they're like, yeah, no, that's fine. I was like, cool. Okay, good. Because I don't know any of these things.
Yeah. Well, when you do the next book, I hope you come on my podcast. We can talk about it again.
Thank
But
you.
but before you go, I always do this. From me to you, I kind of just ask a podcaster or a fellow person to tell people like something that you've learned about yourself, or maybe something you're learning about yourself. that can help somebody that's listening to the podcast. So for me, what is the best thing about being an author now, or what's the best thing about being a podcaster that you've learned and are still learning?
Oh, there's so many things. That's a great question, by the way. Um, I've had people ask me, I had this one podcaster ask me, what's um what's your worst trait or quality about yourself? And I was like, oh my word. That's hard. Um, man, I've learned that I can do stuff. I never I was just working and living and being miserable. I didn't think I had any potential in me to do anything. Like, I really thought I was worthless. For so many years, I struggled with that. And when I started working more on personal development and learning through different people, reading different books, like Simon Sinek, I really love him, John Maxwell, um, Randy Spelling, he was my life coach. He really helped me a lot. Is realizing that you can do things. We all have something unique inside of us that we're meant to do. Um, that other people, even if other people have this talent, they're not you. You are unique. And so the more you say yes to things, the more you put it out there. Like the podcast, I was like, I can't do this. But then when I started doing it, I was like, hey, I can do this. I can do other things. And that brings hope to life because it felt so hopeless when I was working in a job I hated, just being miserable and thinking, is this my life? There's got to be more to it than just doing this. And so that's what I've learned. I also think it's really encouraging when, like on the podcast, when you have people who say, because you shared this or you had this guest on and they said that helped me. I think that that's really impactful because you're realizing you're helping others through conversation and through something that you're doing, right?
Right.
And I'm sure like you must have people saying the same thing to you, like from your conversation that you had from this podcast you did. It meant something to me and I got something from it and it made a positive impact in my life. That is so exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And
It
so,
is.
yeah, I think it's exciting to know that you have potential. And I think a lot of us don't really realize it, but we
Yeah.
all do. No matter who you are, there's something in you you can do what you want, like what you want to do, what you're interested in, find that passion and start towards it. Sorry, I went
Right.
on a little rant there.
Nah, that is what that part of the show is for, because we need people to explain that, because a lot of people do, you know, feel like they're just trapped in life sometimes and they don't know why they're still doing certain things. It's just like, well, you're doing certain things because this is all you know. You're not really trying
Yeah.
to push yourself outside your box or your comfort zone, as I say. So you're so afraid of going out of the comfort zone because you don't think that people are going to relate to it, or you think that you don't deserve it. So
Right.
sometimes you get stuck into something because this is the one thing that they say you're good at. But there's so much more out there about yourself, and you can discover something about yourself that you didn't know. And I think podcasting for that, but I'm happy podcasting that has brought me to this, because I got a chance to meet you and listen to your podcast and read your amazing book. And one more time, tell everybody where they can find you on social media, and more importantly, where they could get this book. Where they could get
Thank
this
you.
book.
So you can find me on Instagram at Steph_up_podcast, at on Twitter at Steph_and_Webb. Uh, it's hard finding social media things now because
Yeah,
they're all taken. I have my podcast website is called stephuppodcast.com, where you can find the book is stephanieannwebb.com. You can actually buy it directly through there or through Amazon. Um, or Barnes and Noble. You're in the States. I'm in Canada. Barnes and Noble is on there as well. I'm working on getting it in the bookstores, but for now it's just available online.
online. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one more time, ladies and gentlemen, from the Amazing Step Up podcast, one of my good friends, Stephanie. I'm gonna go read this book one more time because it was a really good book.
Thank you,
Uh,
Brandon.
and thank you for coming on my podcast. I really appreciate it. And everybody go buy her book. What Should Dragon Do? Is an amazing book. Your kids are gonna love it. You might even read it, and you might even love it. You might find some things about yourself you didn't even know. So, thank you for coming on my podcast one more time. And ladies and gentlemen, it's Brian Janus Show, and we are